Hello. I wanted to start today by telling you a story. I was out recently with a good friend. He's been divorced for a little while. He's a single dad, and he was telling me that he had this awkward conversation with his mom on Mother's Day. She had said to him, "You know, you never spend enough time with us." And he was devastated. He was like, "Well, wait a minute. I spend every other weekend at your house. I come there and I take care of stuff on a regular basis for you. And I always call you at least once a week. And so, what could she say? She means I never spend any time with her." He was really mad. And he goes, "This sounds just like my ex wife." And he kind of went off on her as well. And he said, "What does she want from me?" And I said to him, "Are you asking me as a friend, as somebody from the culture, or a pastor?" And it kind of stopped him. He kind of looked at me and he said, "Well, what's the difference?" And I said, "Well, a friend would tell you, yes, your life is hard and it's tough, but you've obviously had to set boundaries, and so it's okay if you don't see your mom as much as you think she should." He's like, "Oh, okay. Well, what about culture?" And I would say, "Well, culture would tell you you're probably spending too much time over there, and that there are these assisted living places that you can put your parents, and of course, then they'll have plenty of people to entertain them and take care of them, and you don't have to worry about it anymore." He said, "Okay, well, what's the pastor's response?" And I said, "Well, as a pastor, I kind of got to go back to the scriptures. I know this isn't all that popular these days, but it does say in the scriptures, honor your father and mother. And it does say, love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and to love others as you love yourself." He kind of looked at me and I said, "If you don't like those answers, I mean, we could always go into the Old Testament that says, hatred stirs up strife, but love covers all offenses." That's from Proverbs 10:12. He said, I kind of like the friend response." I laughed. But I think that's pretty much where we all are when we say, "Hey, go out and love your neighbor." Now, as a Christian, this is kind of a mandate to me. Jesus said to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, which I try to do, but love your neighbor as yourself. Well, what does that look like? I mean, that can be really difficult sometimes. And then I remember this book by Gary Chapman called Five Love Languages. I often use it with folks who are first getting married, and we kind of talk a little bit about all the love languages. I have them take the test, and we kind of uncover some things that maybe they've never thought about, especially if it's first marriage or they're much younger. And there are these five primary love languages, but I also think they intersect when we say go love your neighbor. The five love languages are pretty simple. Dr. Gary Chapman says they are words of affirmation, that is, saying supportive things. There are acts of service, which are doing things. There are receiving of gifts, which means someone receives love when they get a gift from you with good intent, or you can give love by giving something to someone that has good intent behind it. Then there's quality time, which is the idea of spending meaningful time, quote unquote meaningful. And then fifth one is physical touch, which we often spend a little bit more time on because so many people have that as a love language and don't fully understand that it's not always about intimacy. It is into me see, but well, we'll get into that later. So, quality time. What does it mean to show someone close to you that they care by talking to them in this love language of time? Now, my friend, what his mom was saying, and probably what others were saying to him, his ex-wife in particular, maybe even his kids down the road, is that quality time isn't about this idea of shortening the time you're with someone. That's really a 1997 Newsweek article that talked about quality time versus quantity of time. And a lot of that has been debunked and debated over time. But the reality is this, right? Quality time does not necessarily mean a shortened period of time where it's intense, but it does mean spending time with someone with intention. and with a seriousness that actually allows the other person to sense you actually want to be there. It's not watching 14 hours of Netflix with somebody side by side on a couch and not saying anything to each other. It's not playing a video game without interacting with somebody. It's not driving 24 hours to a vacation spot with someone. It's not spending time sitting on a baseball field, a soccer, football sideline watching your friend's kid play the sport. It's not about just going out to dinner and then sneaking phone calls and texts in between courses. Quality time is not being in one place but thinking of another place you'd rather be. None of that is quality time. Quality time is really the sense that you are willing to take the time to meaningfully sit with another human being and interact in a way that lets them know you care. And it can't be rushed. Hence the reason quality time and quantity of time always fight with one another. Because what is quality to you may not be quality to them. So it's very determined on the people who are participating. As Gary Chapman, the author and marriage counselor, says about this love language theory, whether it's spending uninterrupted time talking with someone else or doing activities together, you deepen your connection with others through the sharing of time. So it's really important that when you're with that special someone, that they feel that that time is sacred to them and that you're truly present. It means turning the TV off. It means putting the fork and the knife down long enough to listen to another human being. It means putting the phone on standby or off and literally looking into the eyes of another human being. In sales, we used to draw this image of two circles kind of coming together, half circles coming together, and little dots in the middle. And I would always ask the question, what is that? And people would make guesses, and some of them off color, but I would laugh and I would say, no, that's the secret to everything. It's called belly to belly. When you're belly to belly with someone and you're in front of them, everything can change. And it is probably the most important thing you can do if someone else's love language is quality time. And if it is quality time, then you need to do these 7 things on a regular basis. First, you need to make a point of planning some quality time to connect. That means getting your scheduling together. The second thing you need to do is avoid multitasking when you're with someone who you want to spend quality time with. You know, if your kid looks over from the sideline and you're looking at your phone or doing your work, it's not quality time. If you're on your phone as you take your daughter to gymnastics, it's not quality time. If it's driving in the car and your kid is talking to the other kids and you're not engaged in that conversation, you're just an Uber driver who doesn't get paid. It's not quality time. The third thing that we know for sure, quality time means eye to eye. Looking at one another directly. The fourth thing is being interested in what they have to say and truly engaging in what's going on. Actively listening, using skills sets that you probably learned for work or in communications class about, tell me more. Could you tell me a little bit about that? Could you dig in a little bit that? I don't understand that. All of those things actually are part of quality time together. Another part of quality time is not canceling plans. Just because you make the plan all the time that you're going to be there on Fridays and you miss it half the time doesn't mean it's actually quality time anymore. It doesn't even matter. Because what you're saying every time you miss that time with that person is you don't matter to me. The sixth part of this is having a daily ritual. One of the human interest stories I read recently about 2 men who walked through the pandemic together. Now, it's interesting how they set up their schedule. Every morning, they would both walk 2.5 miles to the central place. They would high five one another or elbow five because of the mask. and the fear of touching another human being. They would hit hands or hit elbows or bump into one another and turn around and walk back. So they both walked 4 miles. But that time together actually bonded them so closely that as we break out of the pandemic, they want to continue to do it because it was their way to connect with one another, and it was a way to spend quality time. That little vision coming to one another and always planning it every day meant something to both gentlemen, so much so that it grew their relationship. And finally, you have to prioritize the time together so that the relationship is reinforced. We can plan time together with folks and never have a conversation. We can plan time together with folks and it not reinforce the relationship. I remember being on a bowling league with somebody once, and every Sunday night we would meet and we'd bowl together, have a few do a few pops, adult beverages in between, and I can't tell you anything about that person's life. And I did it for a couple of years. There was no meaningful time. It didn't reinforce a relationship. It was all about winning. It was transactional at best. The contrast to loving quality time is stonewalling, the act of complete indifference with another as they're near us. I've talked about this before, so I won't delve into it too deeply. So in a nutshell, to arm ourselves from strong stonewalling, we must always keep an eye on open communication. We must be willing to keep ourselves focused on another human being at all times. The contrasts of loving one another versus ignoring one another are so stark, I think we all can understand them. The majority of affairs happen in relationships, marriage relationships, not because they fell out of love, but because they weren't spending enough quality time together with intent. They showed indifference to the other person and almost assumed as if they would always be there, and they wouldn't actively fight for better engagement or more communication. You see, that's a key. You have to be honest and ready to speak with others. And so if you're trying to love your neighbor as yourself, if you're trying to love your neighborhood, you have to figure out how to actively engage with your neighbors. And it might be that you have to stop doing some yard work and realize that the grass will get cut another day. It's better to have the conversation with the neighbor. It's better to have them over and have a bunch of weeds in your yard than spend a whole lot of time in some form of a large box store that sells hardware equipment. And when you want to love someone with quality time, you look to how they spend their time, and that'll tell you a lot about their love language. So I hope this was helpful to you today. If you want to know more of this information or want to see a handout that we give of ideas of how to spend quality time with other people, you can do that on our website at communitycenter.life /renew-relationships / and just go on down to extras. It's great that you were here today, and I hope this is helpful. Take care.